Hello, my name is Seth. I'm going to be talking about building clan light mechs, specifically the Jenner 2C and the Arctic Cheetah. I'm going to be covering optimal builds, how to effectively use the weapons, and some strategies and tactics to maximize your damage. The Arctic Cheetah and the Jenner 2CA, which is a laser variant of the Jenner, both usually run pretty similar builds. It's 6 small pulse lasers. 6 small pulse laser. The difference between the two is that the Arctic Cheetah, of course, gets the ECM and usually has better jumping capability because you can remove some of those on the Jenner. The Jenner tends to go a bit faster, has a little more armor and a bit more heat efficiency. But other than that, they are played pretty similarly. The other light mech that you'll see a lot of out of the clans is the standard Jenner 2C. The build I suggest for it is 4 SRM4s and 2 SRM2s. Reason for that is that you can alpha strike all those SRMs and not have to deal with Ghosty, whereas if you have 6 SRM4s or 6 SRM6s, if you're feeling a little crazy, you're going to have to deal with Ghost Heat or you're going to have to stagger fire, which is going to cause you to spread your damage. Also, in all these light mechs, I really suggest shifting a lot of the armor to the front. Usually I put 4 to 5 points in the rear, and that's pretty standard for all my mechs, for all my light mechs. Module-wise, the Jenner 2C should choose radar deprivation if you haven't mastered it yet. Once you have it mastered, radar deprivation and seismic are the go-to modules for it. For the Arctic Cheetah, you don't really need radar deprivation because it has ECM. So for that one, I suggest seismic sensor and target info gathering so you can get a damage readout on your target a little bit faster. So one of the first things I want to talk about when piloting a light mech is how to aim your weapons effectively. One of the problems I noticed with a lot of new players is that they have their mouse sensitivity set too high. And so when they're trying to keep their beam duration on a single component that they're shooting at, they end up correcting too much or too little and waving their lasers over multiple sections or just shooting past the mech. I'll give you an example I'm talking about. Right now I have my mouse's DPI set to about 1500. And I'm going to try to keep my target on this Vindicator's left leg as I go by. Not bad. I mean, I got most of my damage on the left leg, but I noticed I also shot past the leg to the building, the water, and I also got the other leg, which is not what I was trying to shoot at. So, normally what I have my mouse set to about 90% of the time is about 400 DPI, and in-game I have the sensitivity about halfway, and I turn off both smooth and acceleration because I don't need the game trying to guess what I'm going to do. I also turn on arm lock because I want all my weapons to drill into the one section I'm shooting at. Both my arm and my torso weapons, the one section I'm shooting at. And this time I'm going to try to hit the right leg of the Vindicator as I go by. Alright, so that was a bit better. I still got some damage past it, but I think most of my damage went onto the leg that I was trying to shoot, and it's now open. So now I want to talk about some good practices. As soon as you're in our match, I think it's quite helpful to get acquainted with your mech's heat buildup. What I like to do is take a shot at the ground and see what the heat bar builds up to. So for example, if it reaches around 15% on alpha, then in the back of my mind, I try to remember to have the heat bar around 80% or less before I fire all my weapons. Shutting down in the middle of a brawl is a death sentence, especially for lights. Another good practice is to try not to be the first mech to engage the enemy. Big groups of mechs all chasing a single light mech, aka chasing the squirrel, is a real thing, and while it might be beneficial to your team to have half of theirs chasing you, you're ultimately going to have to play a bit greedy in one of these builds in order to do well. So with a short range build like the Arctic Cheetah or the Jenner 2C, I like to wait a bit until the other team is a bit preoccupied shooting the rest of my team, and then I can look for isolated or damaged mechs to finish off. In this particular clip, I'm hanging back with the rest of my team and waiting to see if the other team makes a mistake. In this case, they sent 2 fast mechs to try to get some quick kills with the round. However, since I was able to spot them, I was able to give my team a heads up. Notice that as soon as I get the leg off the Arctic Cheetah, I break off because I don't want to keep fighting 2 mechs on my own, but as soon as my team backs me up, I get back into the fight. Now this clip is a good example of both finding a mech that's preoccupied shooting the rest of my team and a good example of why locking radar and focusing opponents is important. Once I'm behind him, I take my time to lock my radar onto him and check for damaged sections. Sitting on, I decide I want to take out that big A-side torso omnipod because I know it's going to hold a lot of his weapons. Once I destroy the left torso, I decide to focus his right torso since he's not making any attempt to shield it. In general, it's best to avoid one-on-one fights with other light mechs, especially if they have a similar build to you. Fortunately for me, this pilot is making a couple of mistakes. He doesn't seem to be focusing my legs, which is generally a good idea when fighting light mechs, and he's chain firing his weapons, which is spreading damage all over my armor as well as the ground behind me. When you're in this situation, take your time to line up your shots and fire when you have a good target, rather than firing as soon as your weapons recycle. Now, for every rule, there's usually an exception. In this clip, I'm taking my time and waiting to see if the other team makes a mistake. If you notice on the minimap, there's a radar contact on Delta 5, which is the top of the mountain. You might also notice that it's a hollow diamond symbol, which tells me it's a light mech up there. So in my mind, I'm thinking there's an opportunity to score a quick kill. Notice that I switched my ECM from disrupt to counter because I want to give that light mech up there as little warning as possible. I can see by now that it's the mislinks up there with its back to me, and I could have taken a shot at it to try to score some damage, but didn't want to alert it to my presence, and instead I wanted to wait for the ideal shot. Just to be sure I got the kill myself instead of one of my teammates getting in it, I deselected the mislinks from my radar. You can see we have a hollow triangle above his head that nobody else on my team has their radar locked onto him, so I can take my time to get a full alpha into his back rather than trying to go for his legs like I normally would on a light mech. The single best piece of advice you can follow is to look for unfair fights. When you're in a light mech, you can't be shy about hitting below the belt and playing your strikes as much as possible. So if you see something like, say, a fresh Nova sporting twice your firepower, just move on. Here the next target I see is a distracted Black Widow. I can see it's already taken some internal damage to the right torso, and since XL engines are not uncommon on Black Widow builds, I decided to do an XL check and focus on the right torso. I also want to show the Jenner 2C SRM build. Much of what I covered for the small pulse laser builds also applies to the SRM build. However, instead of having to deal with laser burn duration, I have to lead my targets or wait for them to stop moving relative to me to take my shot. While I do give out the precision of the laser build, the SRM build generally has a much greater alpha strike punch. Well, that pretty much concludes this video. I want to credit Krivvan for his great light mech guide, which I'll link in the description. I hope you guys find the information here useful. Good luck and good hunting.